Hey everybody, this is Dark Guardsman and welcome back to another dev demo. In this demo we're going to show off the new pipe belts that are going to be introduced to assembly line here pretty soon. They are almost completely finished with only some minor issues such as textures, localizations, crafting recipes, things that are more cosmetic than they are actually functional, but the functional side is working as planned. So right now you can see from the visuals we have basically a simple caged conveyor belt like pipe. And to not throw any illusions out there, these basically are pipes. They're very similar to what Buildcraft does. Not quite right on par. Buildcraft has a little bit more complexity to theirs. They're highly simplified in order to allow exactly that, a simplified build system. They're not meant to be complicated. They're not meant to be overly fabulous and do wonderful things. They're just meant to take an item from point A and bring it to point B without a lot of complicated code, without things that'll break easily. And yeah. They do have a GUI. The GUI, of course, localization still need to be implemented. You can set it to input and output items. So it has built-in support for that. You don't need an upgrade for that. I don't think I'm going to put an upgrade on that. I may do upgrades to increase speed, which is going to be guaranteed as these only transport one item at a time. You can, of course, put an item in here and it will actually move through the system and go all the way out and around. You can change it to stop rendering on the top, so I can click this, and of course I still have work to do to get to update, but it will stop rendering, which will allow you for different cosmetics. Future plans plan to allow changing various colors about the belts, how they render, how they appear, giving a wide variety of build styles. And down the road, like way down the road, there will be JSON support implemented for this. So you can implement custom graphics and everything else, so that way even if you're in a pre-built world, you can implement a new render that allows this existing one to exist, but then allowing you to switch over to a different one. As for the actual functionality, I've already noted it goes from basically point A to point B. It'll interact with any inventory that is both a normal inventory and an eye-sided inventory. It only allows items to come in through the back and go out through the front. It will not accept it from the top, bottom, or left, or right. It has three slots. It has a input slot, center slot, and output slot. This is for this current belt. There will be a variety of belts. There will be L turns, R turns, T intersections, various other things to allow more dynamic connections and interaction. There will be sorting systems, ejectors, and various other things you can attach to these to allow for sorting systems in a very compact way. Keep in mind that these are not designed to replace the old belts. So let's get one of those out and show that real quick. So here's the old belt. These are not meant to replace these. These are meant purely for items. These are more cosmetic than they are actually meant to be a functional replacement. These guys will do the same thing they did in the old mod. They will allow you to move items and entities, as you can move yourself with these as well. These will not allow entity movement. They will be purely just item based. Anyways, let's go ahead and flip this hopper off. They do support hoppers, so they will support just about anything else. You can override the hopper turn off by flipping this on. I am not going to fix that. That's just something to pay attention to what you're doing when you're setting it up. So we'll get some items to go clear around. These are ISBR renders, so we are in 1.7.10 for those who actually care. You can tell from the debug menu up there. Let me turn it off because I completely was oblivious to it being on. I will eventually update this to newer versions. It's going to happen. I'm not quite entirely sure when it will happen, but it will. But for the moment, these are in 1.7.10 when they use ISBRs, which are I Special Block Render Handlers. They are the old way to render a static block. These basically use a similar version of it, though it uses the Minecraft, so a block uses the similar code as this does. So they only render once per chunk update, so every time the chunk updates, every time you place a block, it will re-render. That's the reason I had to, when I changed this to this, I had to click that or break it to in order to, actually I just flipped out a pull on wrong button. So that's the reason I had to do that in order to get that to show up, because they only render once per chunk update. That is being fixed, by the way. The items themselves are rendered via Tether, so TinyLNG special render, so they do actively update, but as you can tell from the frame rate up in the corner, it doesn't impact it that much. They are probably by far lower on impact than item frames. Item frames are pretty heavy on the render time. They're like 400 milliseconds. So I suspect these are less by quite a factor. I don't know how much less that actually is, though. It's a 1.7.10, though, so it's probably not the most efficient. We'll work on that and get that improved and everything else, but that's been pretty much it. Just a really simple pipe belt. These can be rotated, so if we get one of these out here, they do support wrench handling. It will work with just about any wrench that Voltzinger supports. So that would be Buildcraft, IC2, mechanism, applied energistics. If you right click, it does the standard, just classic rotation. If you shift right click, it'll invert it. I'm tempted to add more complicated rendering. I know some mods have it where if you lean over to the right and you click it, it'll go to the right, and you lean over the other way. I can't implement that, but to be honest, it's only got 4 orientations. If we had more than 4 orientations, we would implement more. Now, for those who are going to ask, what about going up and down? I am not going to be implementing a pipe to do that per se. There will be upgraded versions that can do that, but they will not actually be pipes. They'll be things like lifts and different type of style of machines. And it'll mostly just be graphical, because the code will work roughly the same. It'll go, okay, go to the center and then go up. Because right now how the code works is it grabs all inputs, then tries to move them forward. Or actually, it does it in the invert way. It grabs the outputs, tries to eject them, then it grabs the center and tries to put them to the outputs, and it grabs the inputs, try to put those to center, and then it tries to grab machine inputs and try to drag them into the pipe. So when we go to put if we go to put up and down, it would just be simple, just add an extra input output to the system. So the code will be really simplistic. When it comes to rendering, we're going to put like a little lift, so it'll go to center, then it'll animate and lift the item up, and then move on. That way you get that nice, beautiful visual and everything else. When it comes to the textures, I am going to probably implement better textures. If you can't already tell, there is actually glass in here. I implemented a very special render handler, so that way the glass could render while at the same time rendering the frame without it being see-through. That is something that's not actually standard with the 1.7.10 version of Minecraft. I don't know if that's even standard with the newer versions, but it's just a double render pass, so there's actually glass there, so that can be textured. I'm probably going to improve the texture for that. I'm going to improve the frame texture so it looks more like kind of construction tubing. And then the conveyor, I'm still not sure if I want to animate the conveyor, because as you can tell, the items don't exactly move in step with an animated system. So if we had animated this, you would see the conveyor moving underneath the items at all times, and it wouldn't look exactly perfect. You can exactly see it over here too. I want to kind of mimic Factorio in that regard, and maybe make the animation step with the item, but I may end up having to use a Tether for that. And if I end up using a Tether, I defeat the whole purpose of having that nice solid block frame. Another reason why the block frame exists, if we actually get far enough away here, you'll see that the items will eventually stop rendering, but the pipes will not stop rendering. As you saw the chest stop rendering, the pipe still renders. So that allows you to actually use these decoratively, and you can see them from distance and everything else. A lot of the machines I'm going to be building from here on out are going to be using the static-based system. They will actually be using a JSON-based renderer. Some of these pipes will be switching over to that down the road. So that's where I was talking about where you can switch out the renders, so it'll be able to load not only its own pipe render, but it'll be able to load custom ones from your mod pack or texture pack that you're using. But that's been it. That's the demo so far. I'll come back more when I have a lot of this cleaned up and everything else. We're probably going to put some animations in here, so that way you can tell how long it's going to be before it switches item. Right now, I think it's about 1 second per movement. Higher upgraded versions will be faster, so you'll have a tiering progression like you would see in Factorio. And for those who point out that I'm mimicking Factorio for the sake of mimicking Factorio, assembly line existed long before Factorio did, and so did a lot of these designs and concepts. This one has been on the docket board for a very, very long time. I think I came up with the original concept back in like 2013, 2014, and I just set it aside because I was very anti-pipe back then. I didn't really like the concept of pipes because they just felt cheap and cheaty, although I kind of warmed up to that eventually, because pipes they're nice, they work. So we got basically a pipe and assembly line now, but we're going to keep the old classic conveyor belt, and there will eventually be a wide variety of conveyor belt styles on top of this. So I am planning on building a full block conveyor belt down the road as well, so that way you don't have this high 3D model-esque belt here. By the way, this will be eventually an ISBR just like these, so when you get from a distance away, and we'll show that again, if you get a distance away, that will stop rendering. And that would be one of the things to fix as well. But there will be a full block one, so that way you don't have to worry about collision block problems. These do have collision issues, and that is something that will never be fully fixed, just for the simple fact that it's just one of those downsides with how Minecraft functions. I mean, it does kind of work for most time. You'll see it more often, the collision block problem, when you see other entities walk over top of it, or entities that are not full block in size. But yeah, that's been it, so I'll see you all later.